With over 40 countries across the globe now listening to Dharma Drops Podcast, the community is growing. And so to meet those needs, I have started the Facebook group, the Dharma Drops community page. Here you can hang out, share ideas, get updates, information, and even chat with some of the Dharma Drops guests because they're members of the page too. To find the Dharma Drops community page, head over to Facebook, search for Dharma Drops, D-H-A-R-M-A, Dharma Drops community page, and there you can request to join, and then we'll hang out and have a damn good time. Hey guys, want to hear more exclusive episodes of Dharma Drops Podcast? Well, there's good news. By registering for my new course, Feeding the Wildlife, you will have access to exclusive episodes with some of your past favorite Dharma Drops guests, including Rye from the New School Kitchen, Danny from Spiritual Junkies, yoga teacher Logan Wagonseller, Tara from Be Uncluttered Podcast, and Gabby of Make Your Perfect. In addition to these exclusive podcast episodes, you will also receive 14 days of tips, tricks, methods, and information about how to exist in the chaos of life and thrive in it. Oh, and there's yoga classes and meditations and all kinds of cool stuff. It's only $21 and you get a ton of stuff and you get to hear more I can't even say the name of my own podcast, you guys. Dharma Drops. You get more episodes of Dharma Drops Podcast that you can only listen to by registering for the course. So head over to RebeccaWarfield.com and you can register right there. And you get to keep all of the content for life. So for $21, not a bad deal. Last but not least, before you get into this episode of Dharma Drops Podcast, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Dharma Drops on whatever app you're listening to it on. Okay, here we go. On to the episode. This is Dharma Drops with your host, Rebecca Warfield. This podcast is a little bit about yoga, a little bit about life, and a little bit about whatever. And just as a warning, this podcast is unscripted, so that means I might regret a few things that I say. But hey, maybe I'll say some pretty awesome stuff too. Remember, these are musings, not truths. Buckle up, giddy up, because here we go. Okay.
This feels very professional now.
Oh, I'm really professional. Are you kidding me? Everything I do is professional. You know me well enough to know that.
I do.
Oh, man. I think that's a really good way to start this podcast. Slamming some coconut water down on the table.
Listen, I have to slam this coconut water because I did prana pump a couple of hours ago.
Heck yeah.
It was my first prana pump ever.
Oh,
I told Addie Joe at the end, I said, I'm no longer a prana pump version.
Yeah, that's right. So for those of you listening, let's see. It was just one episode ago that Addie Joe was on here talking about prana pump, and my friend Angela, who I'll introduce formally in a minute, she went to Addie Joe Berriman's prana pump class today, and was it tough?
It was tough, but it was awesome.
Awesome.
I loved it. There were a couple times, I mean, it was kind of questionable. It was touch and go for a second, but I survived.
Questionable in the sense that you were like on the struggle bus?
Like I thought I might die, but I didn't. It was fine. It all worked out in the end.
When you said I might die, all I could think of is I don't even know if I talked about this on the podcast yet, but I am going to a training in California with Annie Carpenter, and my friend Angela will also be there because she is finishing up her 300-hour training with Annie. And I was like, I'm afraid I might die. I'm afraid I might die. And Angela said, oh, you'll look death in the face. I was like, oh shit.
But you'll rally.
I will rally. I hope so.
You'll be better and stronger for it.
I hope so.
No,
So
it was. I loved it. I had so much fun today. Addie Joe is so positive.
She's amazing.
She's so encouraged. She really makes you feel like you could do just about anything.
I've been really encouraged ever since listening to, or not even listening to, just recording her episode, her 5 bold ways to amp up your fitness routine. I told her today in the Dharma Drops community Facebook page, I said, I feel like these rules apply to everything in life, not just fitness.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. You know, I mean, we know this from the yoga practice. The way that we treat our practice, the way we treat our bodies is sort of a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
So we already know that. But I don't know. I hadn't contextualized it in the ways that she had brought it up. And so, I don't know. It was really good.
It was great. I've actually started listening to that episode for the second time.
Oh, awesome.
I enjoyed the first go around so much.
Oh, awesome. That's so exciting.
Yeah. And I just really, I had so much fun. And she's created such a sweet little community. Everybody's so positive. I mean, I felt like I was sort of walking into a new member of the club.
That's awesome. But a welcoming club.
A welcoming club. A
A
very welcoming club. And, I feel fitter and stronger.
Awesome. So for those of you listening right now and you're like, who are these people? Well, I'm Rebecca Warfield. I'm your host of Dharma Drops Podcast. And this is my yoga life partner and my dear friend, Angela David. What's up, Angela?
How are you? Thank you for having me today.
Good. You're welcome. Angela is a registered nurse and a yoga teacher. And once we get through these informalities at the beginning of Dharma Drops, she's going to share a little bit about the relationship between her career as a professional nurse and a yoga teacher, which is sort of a subject near and dear to my heart. Not so much in nursing, but my own yoga path, as you know, as a teacher, was really influenced by my professional career as an educator. And I think sometimes folks believe that when you become a yoga teacher, you leave all that other stuff behind, right? And now you're this new thing. But it's really just a complement to what we do, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Or even, not that you leave this one thing behind, you're not leaving your life behind becoming a different person, but that you kind of separate those two things. And that's sort of what I did a little bit in the beginning is, I felt like I had an identity as a professional registered nurse and a yoga teacher, but that those things didn't merge, or they were, and I just didn't understand how it was happening. Right. And I think other people don't acknowledge how those things can merge and complement each other. Because I remember when I first started teaching yoga, I was in the hallway at UNCW and another professor said to me, teaching yoga must be a really fun thing to do on the side. And I was like, yeah, it is fun and it is side money, but it's actually influencing the way I teach my English classes, and the way I teach yoga is influenced from what I have done professionally. So it's not just this fun thing I do on the side. Like, absolutely, this is real. Yeah.
And one thing that really bothers me sometimes is that I feel like the career as a yoga teacher is delegitimized, if that's a word. I might have a master's degree in English, but I don't know shit. I make up words. So I'm saying, as an authority of the English language, it's a word.
I think that's a word.
It is right now.
Well, you know what? It makes sense because I know exactly what you're trying to say.
That's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't have to be a real word.
It doesn't have to be a real word.
We get to say whatever we want on this podcast. It's our show.
As long as everyone knows what we're talking about, and even if they don't.
I was going to say, I'm not sure if anyone knows what I'm talking about, so I don't know if that's the right criteria to start with right now, because sometimes when I'm talking, I'm like watching people glaze over, like, what is she talking about? Could be anything. But some people don't take that job very seriously. And I think it's really cool that you are bringing these two things together, because everyone takes nursing seriously, I hope. And Angela just rolled her eyes. For those of you,
I would argue that, I think the general public takes the nursing profession seriously. But I'm not entirely sure sometimes about the wider world. I certainly hope so.
I hope I do, because you administer my medicine and take good care of me if I'm sick. So, that's kind of important, right?
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about what's happening right now in your career as a nurse, yoga teacher, both, one or the other? What's going on?
Well, so I am a registered nurse. Have been, I feel like we talked about this on the last podcast, but
oh my God, that's right. We forgot to say that you were the first ever Dharma Drops guest.
I was.
Yes, you were the one that helped me test out my equipment, figure out how to do all this stuff. I forgot. So you did mention that on your first podcast.
And I think that was probably one of the only coherent statements that I made. I was just kind of rambling on for 30 minutes. My dogs were barking, and I think there's something about ordering a pizza in there somewhere.
Where's the pizza right now?
Yeah, it was. I brought vegan cookie dough truffles.
They're really good. They're super good. Thanks for bringing them. Okay, so you're a registered nurse.
I'm a registered nurse. Have been since 1998. Mostly, I've worked in cardiovascular nursing. The first couple of years, I worked on a medical telemetry floor, which
I don't even know what that means.
Well, I was just going to say, for those who may not be in the healthcare profession or medically inclined, that just means a floor where you come if you have heart disease, and we need to put a monitor on you if you need to be monitored. So I was very interested in cardiovascular nursing, cardiovascular physiology. And so I progressed from there into the CVICU, which is cardiovascular intensive care unit.
This is all really stressful.
There's no need for you to be stressed.
It's really stressful.
So I take care of people immediately after they've had heart surgery. So they come from the operating room directly to me. they're with me as long as they need to be, and then they move on from there.
Yeah.
So
it just stresses me out. And if everyone out there thinks that's not important, get out. Just get out. You're done.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, not to be rude, but get out.
Just get out.
Yeah. So while those people are leaving, and so now you are also teaching yoga, and you have been for, as long as I have, which I don't know how long that is anymore.
We graduated from our 200-hour teacher training program, the first one ever at Longwave Yoga.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Lexi Hawks, in May of 2015.
May of 2015. So Angela and I call each other yoga life partners. We've done all of our trainings together.
And now we're really going to do all of our trainings.
Oh my God, I know, because I'm going to do Andy Carpenter's.
Yeah.
Although we won't be at the same time all the time.
No, well.
Just this one, I think, right?
This one, and then, I'm sure I'm going to want to repeat.
Yeah, all of them.
So, yeah. We'll try to coordinate.
So now you're teaching yoga while you're simultaneously working as a nurse, and you found that these things are merging. So what's happening in your careers where you're starting to notice or feel this, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to use the word merge, maybe like a hybrid experience of the two.
I think that's a good way to put it. As I said initially, when I first began teaching yoga, I'd already been practicing as a nurse for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And that was really my identity. It was my professional identity. So this was very new. I had to step into a new role.
I get that.
And I felt like it wasn't intentional, but it was like I had two separate things going on. I had my world, my community at the yoga studio, and then I had my world at the hospital. And it just didn't, I didn't understand at the time how connected they both were. Mm-hmm. And it just sort of started to emerge, I think, as I became more comfortable in my yoga teaching and in my personal yoga practice, most definitely, which, affects the teaching aspect.
Sure, 100%.
If you don't have a good, strong practice, if you're not working your own personal practice, then you're not going to be able to grow as a teacher as well.
Right.
So I think as I started to grow in my practice and in my teaching, I started to bring that into my profession as a nurse, into my work. And my work as a nurse certainly influences the way that I teach yoga. And I've just recently started to acknowledge and embrace both of those things.
That's really cool.
Both of those aspects. Just to give you an example, I work in an area that's very high stress. People who've had heart surgery can be scared.
Often
in
of
pain.
Course.
It's a stressful situation, and so I feel like I just have some extra tools in my nurse toolbox to help alleviate some of their anxiety.
Sure.
And we know now too, in the yoga practice and certain aspects of the practice have been embraced by the scientific and medical communities, because we know that this stuff works.
Right.
We know that the yoga works. We know that deep breathing, we know that meditation helps reduce stress. And just one example of a stress-related illness is cardiovascular disease. And I can easily speak to that because that's, it's my background. So we know that these things work. Yoga asana, if that's what you choose to practice, that's helping to strengthen the physical body. We all know that exercise is important for the physical body. It's also an important stress reducer.
Right.
So this is something now that it's becoming more encouraged and even prescribed by medical professionals to help their patients live healthier lives.
So let me ask you, is it, you mentioned yoga asana, physical yoga, for those of you who are like, yoga what? It's just physical yoga, the practice of yoga. So is it yoga asana? Is it things like breath work, pranayama? Is it meditation? Or what is it that the medical community is starting to embrace in terms of the yoga practice? Or is it all of it?
Honestly, all of it.
Awesome.
In particular, there's a particular focus on stress reduction and techniques to reduce stress. And, we know, just in a very basic sense, we know that we have the ability to control and direct our breath.
Yes.
So we speak about this in our yoga practice as pranayama. We are controlling and we're directing our very life force energy, which is our breath. The breath is the vehicle for life. So we know that we have the ability to control and direct the breath. We know that by taking slow, deep, focused breaths, we can slow down and we can trigger our parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest. So I'm sure everyone's heard of rest and digest, fight or flight. That's your sympathetic nervous system.
And I think most people are living in the fight or flight right now.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. Everyone is kind of in that low level stress mode all the time. You know, you're just ready to go. You know, and that's unhealthy for a variety of reasons. It has an effect on the body and the mind.
Yeah.
So by taking deep breaths, by just controlling our breath, we can put the brakes on.
Yeah.
We can slow that down and take our bodies and our minds out of that fight or flight mode. So and that's just a basic example.
And it makes me think too of, I think, you know, Annie Carpenter talked about this on the podcast, and we talk about it in yoga all the time, but the yoga practice, not only breath, but I think a lot of people think, oh, if I go do yoga, I'll be relaxed because I'm stretching, right? But the asana practice also gives that single point of focus that stops all that craziness in the mind sometimes. You know, if someone's like, hey, can you lift your tops of thighs up and back more? You're too busy thinking about what the fuck does that mean? Then you are to worry about like, oh my God, I have this and this to do, and this happened last year, and I hate my mom. You know what I mean? Like all this crazy stuff. And so, you know, it's the breath, it's that single point of focus that allows us to like just stop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And just, you know, offer a personal example. Just recently at work, I had a patient who was particularly anxious, and you know, if you've ever been in an ICU, you know, hopefully you've never been a patient, but if you have, or if you've been, you know, a visitor, it can be just being there is stressful. You know, the routine is completely off. You know, you don't sleep. It's noisy. There's so many alarms or people running around everywhere. You're sick. You're scared.
Didn't you say there's a name for this when people start to like?
Sometimes there is. People can can develop a temporary dementia that's called ICU psychosis, and it's basically, if you think, it's like not sleeping. Yeah. You know, your circadian rhythms are off. It's just it happens. You know, that's something that happened. You know, people are often getting a lot of medication, so he was feeling very overwhelmed, and he was experiencing a loss of control that you know, people who are, you know, experiencing illness and in the hospital often do feel. And he said to me, he said, I just need to know what you want me to do. I just need to know what I can do. What is the plan? What is something? He wanted to do something to contribute to, you know, to his wellness, to getting better, to his recovery. I said, I just want you to breathe. Yeah. I said, will you do some deep breathing with me? I want to focus on your breathing. And I did that because he was very anxious, but I was also trying to be a little sneaky about it because you know, the patients that I care for, they've had heart surgery, they have to take deep breaths. They have to be able to expand their lungs. They have to be able to take full deep breaths in order to prevent pneumonia. It's very important because they often don't take deep breaths because their chest is sore. They have a big chest incision. And so I also... Gives me the heebie-jeebies. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm really squeamish. Very squeamish.
It's crazy. Look, I watched UFC Friday Fight Night. No, not Friday. Just Fight Night. Not Friday Fight Night. Fight Night last night, and some guy broke his nose. I could hardly watch it. I'm just so squeamish.
We have gone from you trying to use a pranayama technique to ease a patient's anxiety to Friday Fight Night.
Well, because I like UFC and I'm squeamish.
I'm trying to be very serious and yogic and professional.
Me too.
And I'm sitting here across from Becky, and she just cannot stop.
No way, man.
She cannot stop.
I'm just saying I'm squeamish, that's it. But back to what you were saying.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
I don't even know now.
Squeamish. Oh, chest incisions.
Yeah, you know, so it's not just, obviously, you know, I wanted to try to help him to feel better, but, you know, that was just another way he could participate in his recovery. And it's empowering.
Yeah,
also.
For sure.
It's just they don't have to know that I don't say we're going to practice some pranayama.
Sure. That would be really weird.
Yeah.
Hi, person who's never done yoga before.
Right. Unless that person happens to be a yogi and they want to go for it, but this is something that, it's helpful. And like I said, it's another tool in my toolbox.
Yeah.
And on that subject, it's not just about the patient care. It's about us as healthcare professionals as well. Speaking for myself.
That was my next question for you.
It's something, we work in a very high stress situation. No matter where you work, if you're a healthcare professional, you are caring for people during very stressful times. You're often with people during situations that are deeply personal and sometimes tragic and very emotional. And it's also, it's physically demanding. It can be difficult dealing with loss.
Sure.
Dealing with, when things don't turn out the way you intended, or perhaps you feel like you haven't done enough. That's very common, even though intellectually we know, we've done everything that we can to try to alleviate pain and suffering, or, to preserve life and health. It doesn't always happen.
I think that's like a natural experience. I can't speak from a nurse, but whether it's a pet that you've lost or a family member or whatever, could I have done something else?
Right.
That's just what we do as humans,
And, but we don't often have time because we have to be professional and we have to move on, and we have to be able to go home and come back and do it over and over again.
And you have 8 hours to process that and come back the next day? That's a lot.
Yeah. And so it can lead to burnout's a really common term, but I don't think that it doesn't lend itself to, or I guess it doesn't sound quite as serious.
Right. Because burnout just sounds like
it's
something
I'm tired, I'm burnout.
And then it'll go away. I just need to take a bubble bath, and then I'll feel better. Yeah, it's not that. It's like teacher burnout. People don't take teacher burnout seriously enough. They just think it's this thing like, oh, well, summer break comes, go feel better.
Right, you need a day off. And
right. It's not like that. It's like career burnout. And
and it comes from, experiencing that day after day, and sometimes you don't realize it's happening. It can lead to what's called compassion fatigue, which is very serious.
We talk about that in education too. Yeah, I'm sure it's a little bit different, but just that constant giving. Yoga teachers talk about how they're like, I run out of things to give.
Yes, your cup is empty, essentially. And you can't take care of anyone else. You cannot adequately provide that. You can't do what you need to do unless you take care of yourself. And that happens in the healthcare profession quite often, and it's real. It's something that sometimes we don't talk about, and we certainly don't talk about it. We don't talk about it enough, and we don't talk about it sort of outside our little bubble. And so something I offer every now and again, or just started offering, is a practice called healing for healthcare providers,
which is really cool.
Yeah, and so it's just it's specifically tailored for healthcare professionals. And it's all about taking care of the caregiver.
I think that's really important too. We might have talked about this I guess it was maybe a month ago. You did a healing for healthcare providers. So I think there's a few professions where only people in that profession get it. Healthcare providers, educators, first responders, firemen. You know what I mean?
Police officers.
Yeah, right. No one else seems to get it. And just being with a like-minded community can help. Yeah. And so that's what your healing for healthcare providers does, right? It just brings everyone from this one healthcare community together to practice yoga.
Yeah.
And so what do you do in that class?
So the class is usually, I do what's called a kind of a deep stretch. So, they'll hold postures for a longer period of time. And this is all basic. This is suitable for people who are, brand new to yoga, never practiced before. And I target areas where, we may commonly experience stress or strain. The hips, the back, the shoulders. Then we ease into some restorative postures that are really just meant to relax the body and really trigger that parasympathetic nervous system to put on the brakes. I offer special readings, meditations, pranayama, or breathing techniques that are designed to calm and ground.
Yeah.
And also we we usually take some time to share because we are within a group of like-minded individuals. I like to give that opportunity for practitioners to be able to share something that they may have experienced that has led them to that point, to seek out some self-care.
Yeah, because again, no one else really gets it, right? They could come to my yoga class, but it's not the same.
And that's certainly, look, I wish that everyone who works in healthcare, I wish that every first responder, I wish we all need yoga. But,
we do.
I really, that's kind of a dream. Like, I just really wish that everyone could find that for themselves.
And what I think is really important too is because you're talking about things that are high stress, careers that are high stress, day-to-day things that are high stress. But a lot of people are living in high stress, like you said, all the time. But I also hear people say like, yoga's just too slow. Right? Like, I can't just sit like that. But that's actually what so many people need. There is a time and a place to go work out the gym really hard and, like, punch out your frustrations in a kickboxing class or whatever. I get it. But I think that the element that's often missing in our wellness is rest.
But, those people who have that attitude, who are like, I can't just sit there. They can go. Let them come to a vigorous vinyasa class.
Yes.
Let them find that, and then let them find their way into some restorative.
Yep.
Everything has its place. I sometimes when I'm very stressed out, that's my first love, is a good, strong vinyasa practice.
Me too.
I love it. It makes me feel good.
I like the challenge.
I like
the focus too, because it is a little hard. I mean, I teach restorative, I like restorative, but it is hard to lay there and not think about 8 million things going on in your life. And I like that single point of focus that a vigorous class offers.
It's very meditative for me.
Yeah, me too.
My crazy mind, sometimes I can't experience the benefit of restorative because I cannot shut my mind off. But I can in a vigorous vinyasa class.
Right.
Because, or even, in a home practice when I can really focus, I'm focusing on my alignment, I'm focusing on the work that I'm doing, I'm focusing on my breath, and I can't think about anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Me too. And that's kind of what I meant when I was talking about earlier. We were just talking about the single point of focus. It's just too hard to think about anything else when you're trying to balance in a handstand or whatever. There's nothing else you can think about in the moment, you know? Mm-hmm.
And if you do start thinking about something else, you're going to lose it.
Yes.
You cannot find that balance unless you're focusing.
Yes.
And so that's really helpful for me. But, not everyone is the same. And that's really the beauty of it.
Absolutely. And that's really important too, is to find the yoga practice that works for you, whether you're a healthcare provider or not, right? Just find the yoga practice that works for you, because the benefits will come.
Yeah.
Right? Yoga meets you where you are. For
Absolutely.
sure. It will meet you wherever you are. It is there for you.
It's like, not going in and telling patients that we're going to work on some pranayama today.
Yeah. Could you imagine them be like, what is wrong with this lady?
Right. It's like, I'm trying to reduce anxiety, not produce anxiety.
What I like, though, is that your yoga practice is contributing to the welfare and the benefit of your patients, but also you and your colleagues.
Yes.
Right? Yes. That's really, it's pretty amazing work that's happening.
Well, and I just have to say, I'm not perfect.
Well, who is?
It's a surprise. I know. Surprise, surprise. Everybody just sit down.
I mean, I will tell you I'm perfect, but...
I thought you were going to say, I'll tell you she's not perfect.
No!
I find that sometimes, I try to use, draw on my yoga practice when I'm in stressful situations to kind of help me stay grounded, to help me stay focused. It doesn't always work. I don't always use the tools that I've been given.
That's why it's a practice.
Yeah, I don't always use it. I sometimes, I get irritated, about things that happen at work. I snap. I say things I shouldn't. I grumble. But my yoga practice helps me to kind of forgive myself when I know that I've messed up. You know, when I know that I haven't been the best person.
Yep.
When I know I haven't been the best coworker. Haven't been the easiest person to be around. I mean, you work 8 and 12-hour shifts. We're all in the same room together.
It's a long time.
And my coworkers, they are like family. Mm-hmm. I trust them. You have to, I trust them.
Sure.
I trust them. They trust me, I hope. And we rely very heavily on each other because it's not a situation where it's like, this is my patient, this is your patient. They are all ours.
Right.
So we rely on each other and we have to take care of each other. But, just like a family, things don't always, we're not always the greatest.
But it's there, right? But it's there as a reminder. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I do think that even in the moments that I'm not acting my best, because everyone thinks a yoga teacher is always like perfectly zen.
Yeah, no.
Nope, we're actually, many of us come to yoga because we're the farthest from that possible, But I do think that even the moments when I'm not on my best yoga behavior, if you will, for lack of better terms, it's still better than what it was before I started practicing yoga.
Absolutely.
And so those small changes move and grow with me as my yoga practice goes. My guess is that's the same for you and the way you apply it in your profession.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes like I snap if I'm grouchy on the phone, if I'm abrupt, someone calls, I'm trying to do 1,000 other things at work and I'm having to answer the phone and I'm not, I feel like after I'm thinking, that wasn't really my best. I wasn't really giving my best there. Or just an example, I answered a text, from a coworker, the other day, and I sent the text and I read it and I'm like, ugh, that doesn't sound. And I was like, you know what? I didn't mean that the way it probably came across.
I mean, that happens sometimes.
It's like, I'm sorry, and I sincerely meant it. Cause it's, it happens. Sometimes things come out of your mouth or, text that you just in the moment when you don't apply that pause and consider your response and you react instead. That's something I work on all the time. Yeah,
but luckily I have the yoga practice to help us figure it all out.
Yes.
So tell me then, how is your work as a nurse infiltrating into your career as a yoga teacher?
I'm so glad you asked.
Oh, well, that's what I'm here for. As I said before, I'm just here to guide conversation, that's all.
Initially, I think I kind of worried when I first started teaching. I didn't think that anybody would really be interested in my insights or experience.
I don't think that's true.
And what I've discovered is that, I just started owning it. I'm really interested in anatomy and how the body works, of course. And I think students are too. They want to know how their body works. They want to understand why these ancient practices work for them.
Yes.
They know they work, but they also want to know why.
I think that, let me go back. So when I first started doing yoga on the reg, like every day, like really started with a consistent practice, I didn't know what was happening. I knew it was working, right? At the time, I kind of sort of didn't care. But as I advanced in my practice, I wanted to know more. Yeah. And I think that nothing's true for everyone, but I wouldn't be surprised for the majority of people when they first go to, say, like a power yoga class at a gym, wherever, just to get some exercise on their lunch break. They're probably like, cool, I feel good. Don't know why, I don't care. I gotta go.
Exactly.
But with time, suddenly there's a curiosity, like, wait a minute, why does it feel different when I do this? Why do I feel so much better when I leave my yoga practice?
Yeah.
So I think with time, people are really interested in that stuff.
It's like, they want to know a little anatomy.
Right.
They want to understand why maybe this pranayama practice works for me, why this one doesn't.
Right.
And why that changes maybe from day to day or from practice to practice.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do in your classes? How do you start to bring this stuff in?
I try to, most of my teaching is very alignment based. It's Smart Flow inspired, because I have been studying with Annie Carpenter, the creator of Smart Flow Yoga. And so my teaching is inspired by the Smart Flow methodology, which is very alignment based. I try to give students a little anatomy, like a little mini anatomy lesson throughout the practice, even if it's just something as simple as, this is what it means to externally rotate your arm.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
The secrets of cueing for yoga teachers. It's so confusing. You say externally rotate, and half goes this way, the other half goes that way. And you're like, stop, let's look at what that really means.
and what that means, what internal and external rotation of, let's say, if we're talking about the arm, what that can mean for the rest of the body, what that means for the shoulder. Like if you kind of follow it down the chain, why do we do these things? And what does that mean from a physical standpoint?
Right.
Or just the example that I offered about taking deep breaths. Why does this make me feel better? Why do I feel calmer? Why does this help me? Why does meditation, why does that single point of focus leading to meditation, why does that work? Mm-hmm. What's happening with my brain?
It's really cool.
And so I try to relate the yoga teaching and yogic philosophy back to what is happening in our physical and our emotional bodies from a scientific standpoint.
Right, and I think that's cool. It kind of makes me think of the book, Eastern Body, Western Mind, which is not about anatomy, but it's about the chakra system and then modern Western psychology, where the two start to merge together. And I think that's really interesting and important work happening right now in the yoga practice for people to start making sense of what all this means. Not that the Eastern philosophy was wrong or anything like that, because I believe in the yoga teachings. I mean, to the core of my soul, but it's hard sometimes to wrap our Western brains around this stuff, especially if you don't regularly study the teachings. And I mean, I shouldn't say most people, but the people who come to my yoga classes, they're not home reading the sutras every day, right? They're not home studying the Bhagavad Gita and stuff like that. And so to give the information to them in these digestible forms in ways that make sense with our modern Western lives, that's powerful. I can't say it. Powerful work to be had in a yoga class.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was actually one of my favorite books.
I love that book.
From our 200-hour teacher training. I refer to it often. I really enjoyed it. That book really spoke to me.
I sent a copy to my sister because she's a therapist. I told her, I don't know if you'll believe in the Eastern philosophical part, because I guess in the same way that our yoga people want a little bit of like the digestible nugs from a Western standpoint, having the Eastern standpoint also provides a new way of thinking about life.
Yeah.
Right. And so I sent it to her. I was like, I don't know like how well you'll jive with the whole Eastern part, the chakra system and stuff like that, but it might give you a new way of thinking about some of the people that you work with or even in your own life, and she devoured it.
I'm sure.
Which is, I don't know how you devour that book. I mean, I can't get past the first chakra ever.
That book is so marked up and so dog-eared. I have pieces of paper, I have sticky notes in that book. I absolutely loved it, and I refer back to it. And that's just like having just the example you offered with your sister, just like offering those little Eastern philosophical nuggets to, maybe professionals who have not yet experienced that or maybe just thought about things in that way. Sure.
And that's like the important part, is maybe just hasn't thought about it that way. Because one thing I never want to do is make people feel like the teachings, the yogic teachings, are something they have to believe in. I don't want to proselytize with it or feel like people are being indoctrinated. I really believe that it just offers a new way to think about your life and, the way you're practicing yoga, the decisions that you're making.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's cool.
So every class I teach, I don't necessarily say it. I think that I don't necessarily speak my intention, but I think, at least I think students understand through the practice with me that I'm trying to offer them just a little bit of that. And hopefully they enjoy it and they'll learn something.
Girl, I knew what you were talking about the other day when you had some revolved chair at the wall. I was like, are we ever going to leave? I know what this means. I'm learning. Just let me stand up. Angela's teaching is very hard sometimes. She trains with Andy, who is a really hard teacher. She has a vigorous class with a lot of effort. And I was like, we were here so long. I mean, but I learned. I got my sitting bone against the wall.
But there's a lot of effort, but you can't forget about your return.
That's right.
The Smart Flow methodology teaches that for every action, every effort we make, you can always go too far. Like movement exists on a continuum. Like no matter what you're doing, even if you're not in yoga.
Right.
Like everything exists along a continuum.
I'm the master of taking things too far.
So can I. I definitely. I'm very intense in my practice and in many other areas of my life. 'Tis the season.
Yeah.
And, but if you go too far, that's going to displace something else somewhere else in the body. So you have to be able to come back. That is your return to center. So there's the action, there's the effort, And then there's the holding back or the coming back, just to be able to find balance. And how I think your teaching is unique in that that's going to change from day to day.
Right.
She encourages personal inquiry, the check-in, like, how am I feeling today? Is today a day that I really need to effort and to work hard? Or am I feeling tired? Am I feeling tight? And I need to kind of pull back a little bit more and be a little bit easy on myself.
It makes me think about what you were saying too, just to kind of go back to some earlier parts of the conversation, just about healing for healthcare providers, right? It's that our lives have a lot of effort in it. So tapping in, when do we need that return?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I mean, obviously when I was talking about revolved chair pose, I'm just whining because the class was hard, and I'm talking about yoga asana, but our whole lives are a practice of this effort and return.
Absolutely. And I think that's the heart of it.
Yeah.
And I really think that's what she's trying to say.
Right. For sure. For sure.
This is life. Like,
for
you
sure.
need to check in. You have to figure out what's going to bring you into balance every single day. And in that way, every practice can be tailored to individuals at any level. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to work at your maximum effort every single day.
Right.
It doesn't have to, you're not trying to make a particular shape. And if you consider movement and the way that your body functions, and you honor where you are in the moment, whether that's physically or your mental, your emotional state, your stress level, honor that every single day.
I think it's really easy to get stuck on one end or the other too, like we were just talking about burnout, right? At the burnout phase, you have no more effort to give, right? It's like, I'm totally done, and then there's the other side of that where it's like, you're just totally done, or giving all the time and not balancing any of that,
right? It's like, I'm either like go, and then there comes the crash.
Right.
And so,
I mean, that's not even specific to healthcare providers.
That's everybody.
That is everyone.
Everything, if you have that, especially if you have that personality, if you have a tendency to constantly do and constantly work at your maximum effort, whether that's mentally or physically.
I have a feeling, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that people who go into healthcare have a tendency to do a whole lot of efforting.
Yes.
They have a lot of energy to stuff to give out there.
Particularly, that is true for all healthcare professionals. We're givers.
Yeah. And the job...
And not always the best receivers.
Yes. And the job's intense too, right? The personality to be attracted to that job is intense. I mean, you know this, I'm not sure if I've mentioned on the podcast before, but my dad's a radiologist, which isn't maybe the most intense in terms of running around, like, patching up wounds and all this like crazy stuff, but the hours are intense. It's a lot all day.
It's not just that the hours are intense, but he has an enormous responsibility.
Right. And so to be attracted to that profession, it takes an intense personality. Yeah.
And I can speak definitely for people who are attracted to critical care areas. There's a lot of type A going on.
I can only imagine.
So there's a lot of intense personality.
Yeah. I feel like people who are attracted to yoga often are pretty intense too. Especially,
I think, it's kind of like, I don't know. I think it depends on what type of yoga you're attracted to.
That's for sure. Because I have some people who only come to restorative. Yeah, that's it.
I think if you're attracted to vigorous vinyasa, I think those are your people. Yeah. Our people. Those are our people.
Yeah. That's us. It's you and me.
That's what I do. Yeah. I have a tendency. I am either all in or I'm nothing. Yeah. And that's not always the best way to be. Not balanced.
Yeah. Not at all. But that's why we have yoga, guys. Yes. So what are some other things that you do in your classes? I know you have healing for healthcare providers. You're bringing anatomy into your classes. Do you have some other ways in which you're starting to merge these two areas of your life together?
Well, the class I'm teaching is called Foundation and Flow.
Which is where we held the revolve chair pose.
Yes. Foundation and flow is part kind of like mini workshop, part vinyasa flow. So we flow through traditional vinyasa practice, but I offer time and space to pause and be able to break things down and workshop particular movements, or sometimes it's a particular pose maybe that we might be working toward, which is going to maybe be at the more open end of the spectrum. And that gives people space to ask questions, which I love to do. I love to break it down. Like I love to, it gives people space to ask questions.
Which isn't normal in a yoga class.
Right. You just don't have that kind of space. It's kind of a special class. So it gives people space to ask questions about things that are going on with their bodies, or something maybe they've experienced in another class and they didn't understand, and they just kind of have a moment to have that space, and we can sort of dissect it. And so we do a lot of kind of anatomy talk.
Yeah, and you bust out Mr. Bones, the skeleton sometimes. Like
sometimes I do. Mr. Bones comes to visit.
Yeah. To break things down.
And we're going to be breaking down sun salutations coming up.
Oh,
on
that's
August 24th.
right.
I'm teaching a workshop at Longwave Yoga called Salute the Summer Sun.
That's right.
And we are going to be... It's called Salute the Summer Sun, Demystifying Surya Namaskar A and B.
So when I announced this to my classes, well, first of all, I should mention that I have lost count, but I know that there are listeners in more than 40 countries now. So many people who are listening are not in Wilmington, but you can still learn more about Salute the Summer Sun on Instagram and get just some insight about what Angela's doing and be inspired. But when I had been announcing this to my classes here locally in Wilmington, I had made it a point to say, if you are an advanced yogi, this is, and not just advanced, but if you're an advanced yogi and think that you know how to do sun salutations, you need to come.
Yeah, honestly, it's for everybody.
It is for everyone.
This is open to beginners to advanced practitioners, because we move through, our sun salutations. We move through it. It's a foundation for every vinyasa class.
Yep.
Every vinyasa practice, some form of, or some, variation of Surya Namaskar. But we kind of move through them so quickly on our way to something else. Right. We don't have time to break down. And we offer modifications and open level classes, but it happens so quickly that, people, you may not understand how to modify.
And that's what I was telling my class. I was like, you do these every single time you practice. And the folks that come to my intermediate classes, they're intermediate and or advanced yogis most of the time. And I said, you do these things so fast and you've been doing them so long, you think you know them, but we forget, right? And there's new things to learn along the way. Yeah. So whether you're a beginner or an advanced practitioner, it's always important to come back to the basics.
Absolutely. It's important to remain a student. And so we're going to be breaking it down. We're breaking down individual postures. We're going to discuss transitions, and we are going to talk modifications and props. It's also good if you've, some years ago, I was dealing with a lot of wrist pain, and it became very frustrating in my practice because it's really hard to practice yoga if you can't be on your hands. Yeah. And so we're going to be talking some alternatives.
That's
for
cool.
Those that may be, dealing with some wrist pain and ways that you can kind of maybe help alleviate that, at least for a bit in your practice.
I think that's one of the things that you're really good at in your classes, which maybe also comes back to your work as a nurse, is your prop modifications are really good because, lots of yoga teachers offer props, but I feel like you often are really skillful in talking about why we need props, because people... One, props aren't going to make things easy, just putting it out there to the universe. No. Two, they're designed to teach you stuff. But if the instructor doesn't exactly know what it's teaching you, like what's happening in the body, it can be a little confusing. And I think that's one of the areas that you excel, is propping people up and letting them know why, like what's happening when we're propping ourselves up. Because then suddenly when we understand why we're propping ourselves up, the ego, I think, kind of goes to the wayside a little bit. Because sorry, dudes, but it's often the dudes are like, I don't need a prop, I'm good, But
what's really funny though? I use tons of props in my own practice, but when I first started practicing, when I was learning, I used props, but then I got to the point, it's like, I don't need a prop. Or I don't need to modify. Yeah. And then I think everybody kind of does that, or maybe everyone that has that kind of personality. But and then you as you start to learn, once again, you learn and grow in your practice, and you understand what you're really trying to do here.
Well, I felt that way too in my practice for a while, but I actually don't think I was using the props right. I was actually propping myself up.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
I did a lot of that
I
too.
was actually I wanted more effort in my practice, and the props were literally taking the effort away because I wasn't using them right.
Yeah.
When you use them right, it is not less effort. It's something you're like, shit.
Yeah. No,
I have to hold this.
When you use props, it can allow you to access the work of the pose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is very important to let people know, this is why I'm bringing you a block.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that you're not doing something correctly or that you can't do the pose. Like, here's what we're trying to access. It's like, if you try this, notice how this feels.
Well, what I like about your foundation and flow class, and that for those of you who teach yoga out there, if you're not in Wilmington, maybe this is something you could do in your classes. Having that opportunity to explain why we're using props, but that's so hard as a yoga teacher because you have 1 hour.
Yeah.
You have 1 hour and everyone wants like a quote, well-rounded flow, or they want to work out, and all this stuff. And you have 1 hour to fit all this stuff in. And so it's really hard to do, but to set aside that, 1 minute, even if you're just going over how to use props for one pose in your class, and then the next time maybe like how you're going to use props for, another pose. And eventually as people keep coming to your classes over and over and over, they understand, the whole sequence and how it can be. I don't want to use the word modify because I don't like that word. What word do you use instead of, you use modifications? I use options.
Options are good. I don't know. I think I use options.
Yeah.
Well, I use options because sometimes, I'm sure I have said modifications.
Sure.
But I've been really trying to work on my language because I think that it's important that one person's expression of a pose is not leveled higher than another person's expression of a pose. Like that there's not one like holy grail of a shape.
Yes.
That we're trying to achieve. It's like, yes, it's great to have something to work toward. We're all doing the same work. Mm-hmm. And we're all putting in this effort. And we're maintaining alignment that's appropriate and safe for our bodies. If we're doing that in that moment, then we're all there. Mm-hmm. We're all there. And so I want to try to make that very clear that one shape is not more important one shape's not more important than another.
It's just not. Annie Carpenter said this on her episode of Dharma Drops. The poses don't matter.
No.
They really don't. It's not the emphasis of the practice. We just do them to learn something else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also think too, because you are a nurse, and this is just an outside observation, I feel like when you say like, that's not safe, don't do that, people listen to you better. Because if I say them like, this fucking English teacher, what does she know? But when you say it, there's like it's very clear because it's true,
And I'm trying to take care of you.
Yeah.
That's it, Becky. You need to get that, like, I think it was Kathy Sawyer.
Kathy!
What's up, Kathy? Coming for you tomorrow, Kathy.
Uh-oh.
What was it? I don't remember what we were doing, and Kathy said, Angela's talking in her nurse voice.
Oh, you have a nurse voice?
No, this may have been last Monday. I have to ask Kathy to remind me what we were doing. She's like, Angela's talking in her nurse voice. Kathy, who is also a nurse, by the way, so she understands.
It's so funny. So, Angela, is there anything else that you want to share about, really, like I tell everyone on this podcast, we can talk about anything we want. Yeah. So about nursing, about yoga, about your life, anything you want.
I think one of the most important things, just to sum up this particular subject, is the one common thread is compassion.
Yes.
I try to bring the same compassion that I bring to patients under my care to students that are practicing yoga with me.
And that's what the yoga practice really teaches, compassion. So when I said that in the very beginning, when it changes the way that I teach English and then the way I teach yoga, it was really compassion.
Yeah, that's the common thread.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to emphasize. And I feel like if you are really trying to be compassionate, everything else is going to work itself out.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, if every action you take, it doesn't matter if I am interacting with my coworkers, it doesn't matter if I am interacting with patients and family members, it doesn't matter if I'm interacting with students
or yourself
or myself,
mm-hmm.
my fellow yoga teachers. If I begin from a place of compassion, then I think everything else is going to work itself out.
Yeah, I agree.
You know?
And things do work themselves out. You just have to give this space, and you can call that space compassion, right?
Yeah.
Just, I'm going to offer this compassion, and here we go. You know, I think that's exciting.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So, as you know, because I don't think we have done this before, because you were my first guest, so I didn't have like my wrap up segment,
Oh my
know? Oh my gosh, this is our first time. So
I remember the would you rather.
Oh yeah, we did. There were these questions from both of our favorite podcasts, which Angela introduced me to. My Favorite Murder. It was like all these crazy questions about like, would you rather have what was it, like snakes for arms
or a mouthful of bees?
Or a mouthful of bees, and we both agreed snakes for arms.
That was like not even
no question.
Mouthful of bees was not even under consideration.
Ever. Not even a little bit. Okay, so I don't have those questions for you, but what I do have are my standard questions. So everyone knows that I believe in the yoga teachings and I love yoga. Angela's cracking up because I think she truly wants a mouthful of bees. Everyone knows I love yoga, but there's other things happening in life sometimes. So what are you doing these days in terms of listening to podcasts, watching TV, reading books? What's going on?
I just binge watched the final season of Orange is the New Black.
I haven't watched any season since season 2. I don't know what my problem is.
Oh my gosh. I will say, like, there were a couple, like, kind of some of the middle seasons. I was thinking, okay, this might be starting to kind of get, I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't like the Prison Riot season. If you haven't watched it,
spoiler alert.
There. I mean, it's not that I didn't like it. It was just, it kind of went on. It went on and on and on. And I was a little concerned. But then they really wrapped it up very nicely.
Oh, cool.
Very nicely.
So this was the final season?
This was the final season.
How many seasons are there?
7.
God, it's been a long time. Now, I might be totally wrong about this. Maybe it was just Orange is the New Black is the first thing that I binged on Netflix, but it was one of the first things I think that came out that was just like, boom, the whole season, watch it. You know? And that like changed the way we watch television. At least changed the way I watch television.
I don't watch things that are currently on television anymore.
I don't have cable.
I don't watch cable. If I'm watching Netflix, that's usually what I'm watching. If I'm watching something, I'm watching a show on Netflix, and I like the option of being able to watch one episode or 5.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
This was one of those things because I feel like I rarely have time to do that anymore. So I just I took a couple of days and I'm like, I'm just going to watch a couple episodes here until I finally, it took me about a week.
Well,
I did it while I was cleaning the house, and I had to multitask.
I've been binging Forensic Files, and one day I watched it so long, not once, not twice, but thrice.
Well,
Netflix was like judgmental. Are you still there, lazy ass? Yeah, I'm still here.
Are you still sitting on your sofa?
Yes, I'm still in my pajamas. Yes, it's 7:00 at night, but I'm still here.
I have to say the only thing I just said I don't watch cable, but it's on HLN almost every single night. For instance.
Oh my God, is it really?
Yes.
I didn't know that because I haven't had cable in so long.
It's kind of like I don't know. I think that's the only show that's on that channel. I don't know.
I don't know.
Else ever comes on.
I don't know, but I watch it all the time. You know what Aaron and I were watching today while we were cleaning and just doing stuff around the house? Friends.
Oh my gosh.
And we were chatting about, because my students at UNCW, who, mind you, were born after 9/11 now. That's how old we are. Yep. They are really into Friends. And even
I was already a nurse then.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? And even today, I was walking through Kohl's because, side note, you can now take your Amazon things, like the things that you want to return, to Kohl's. And Kohl's is genius. And then they'll give you 25% coupon because they'll return it. They'll pack it for you, and they'll ship that shit out. And then you get a coupon, right? And then you get to shop their stuff. So anyway, I was walking through Kohl's and they had socks that said Central Perk, which is the coffee shop in Friends. I was like, Friends is back. This is crazy. But we were talking about that Friends is really, really smart because it doesn't matter what era you're in. I feel like people of that age will relate to that show. They did a really good job sort of narrowing down the experience during that time of life.
I agree. I agree. And it's like now a whole new generation has discovered Friends.
Yeah, and they might not have text messaging and like the internet and all this like crazy stuff on the show like we have now, but these experiences are still the same.
Exactly.
Trying to find a job, trying to figure out love, roommates, like the whole 9 yards. It's really good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm at the part where Ross and Rachel are on a break.
Oh.
Just kind of funny.
So television. That's about all that I want to finish up Stranger Things, but I just haven't had the time because I don't know. I mean, I'm back in school and yes, I'm working on my bachelor's degree and I'm currently taking biochemistry.
Boo.
And it's sort of consuming my life.
I can't believe
you're going to have a little compassion for myself.
I can't believe you're going to study Overwatch, Friends. What is wrong with you?
I know.
Priorities, Angela.
I know.
Okay, podcasts. Other than Dharma Drops.
Dharma Drops is my absolute favorite podcast.
Yay! Thank you.
And, we know I love my favorite murder. I have recently discovered a new podcast called WoMed.
I love that.
And it is... just came out. I just started listening. It's Daniel Maltby and Danielle Levesque, and they call themselves Danny and Danny, or Danny and Dee, I think. I listened to a few episodes, but they're both nurses. One is a nurse practitioner, and one is a NICU nurse, which is a neonatal intensive care.
That stresses me out, too.
Takes care of little tiny babies.
Stresses me out.
But the topic of their podcast is women in medicine.
That's so cool.
And I'm so excited. I'm loving it, and I'm really excited to see, what the future holds for them.
That's exciting.
I'm really loving their content.
So it's a brand new podcast?
It's a brand new podcast, just launched, and I think I'm on episode 3.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm really, really into it.
That's cool. I've been listening to this podcast called now I'm getting confused. Great Women of Business. And the content's very good, and I really like the things that they're saying. And I've said this with as little judgment as possible, but the narrators' voices are so boring, and I can only listen to so much of this as they are talking. But the content's really good, and there's an episode about Lydia Pinkham. Speaking of medicine, I didn't even think about the relationship between these two things. So Lydia Pinkham was an entrepreneur in the 19th century, and so of course women's medicine was like ridiculous.
Right.
It was insane, and she had this, quote, elixir. It's like a vegetable compound that would cure feminine complaints.
Yeah.
And of course it didn't. But what she really did, though, is she basically said, like, hey, ladies, I get you. I'm a woman. Because at the time, all the men were doctors. Right. And they were also basically saying, like, well, women are just crazy. Hysteria. Right. All this stuff. And so she was like, I believe in your ailments, and I believe you're experiencing these things. But on top of that, she and her family were masterminds of marketing. Masterminds. So freaking good. There's a book called Feminine. I can't remember what the book is called. Feminine Complaints or Female Complaints. Doesn't even matter. But you can Google it and figure it out. But it is the best book. And there's an episode of Great Women of Business about Lydia Pinkham.
Okay.
And you should listen to it. And I'm sorry, podcast hosts out there, the voices are a little bit boring, but the content's really good. And then they relate it to business practices currently. Like as I was pulling in here to record with you, they were talking about the emotional aspect of marketing, and they brought up Trader Joe's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and how Trader Joe's basically uses these same tactics, because Lydia Pinkham and her family really they didn't develop this marketing method, but they were masters of it in terms of, new marketing at the time. So it's really good. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to have to listen to that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I just thought I don't want to leave this one out.
Okay.
Another podcast I've been recommending to some of my healthcare professional friends that I am obsessed with is called This Podcast Will Kill You.
Oh my gosh, I've heard of this, but I can't listen to it because I'm squeamish.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't enjoy it, but it's 2 graduate students, Aaron and Aaron.
What's up with you and your podcast?
I don't know. But they're disease ecologists, and
they're grad students, right?
Yes, they talk about infectious disease.
Ooh.
History, treatment, origin, where we are, state of disease today. If you're into that sort of thing,
Which you are.
I think it's very interesting.
Well, I just told you, I listened to the replay of the My Favorite Murder about, Typhoid Mary. Yeah.
Good old Mary Mallon.
Typhoid Mary. That is so freaky.
Oh, that's a gross story.
It is a gross story.
And there's just something about it that she just wasn't going to give it up.
No, there's this like horrible part in the story where like the guy's like, she's the one, she's spreading this disease, and he's like trying to get a fecal sample, and she's like trying to beat him away, like, get out of here. I mean, it's like the craziest story I've ever heard in my life. But like, how did she not die of typhoid? Like,
well, she was a carrier. She wasn't infected, but she was a carrier.
Oh, a carrier.
She was a carrier, so she did not have.
So she was not symptomatic.
No, she was not symptomatic.
Oh, got it.
But she was a carrier, which meant that she was, and all she had to do was wash her hands.
Oh.
And maybe just not cook. You know, they just wanted her to stop cooking for people, and she just wouldn't.
She's being compassionate.
Although I will say, even that's at that point, like, on the one hand, I kind of, you know, and if all of this is true, they talked about this in the episode, that was really the best job that a woman could get.
Yeah.
It was better than any other job that she, as a woman and an immigrant, could hope to have. So I do feel compassion for her for that reason, but also when it comes down to the point, if you know that you're the person who's spreading disease and you know that you're killing people, then at that point it almost becomes a little intentional.
Everyone just needs to wash their goddamn hands too. Look, I was in the bathroom recently, a public bathroom, and a lady came out and just walked right out the door, and it took me all I could not to be, excuse me, are you gonna wash your hands, please?
I would have said it.
See, I probably need to, because like, no, she's touching everything, you know, and like, I could get her typhoid.
Well, hopefully not.
I had to get vaccinated for a typhoid vaccine for traveling.
I did too.
One time. Yeah. Okay, I felt awful after that.
I don't remember. I don't think that I did. I don't remember having any sort of. I don't remember. I got a whole series of shots when I went to India. Well, same for me. Mm-hmm. It couldn't have been. My reaction couldn't have been that big of a deal. I don't remember it.
I feel like you're tougher than I am.
That is possible.
She's quieter and tougher. I'm loud and very weak. I can't even look at a paper cut without having a meltdown. There's this Neosporin commercial from like the 90s where the person holds up their index finger and there's like a little cut, and I used to be like, oh my god, like couldn't watch. I had to cover my eyes.
Oh wow.
Thank God for English degrees.
You know, there's something for everybody.
There is something for everyone. It takes all types to make the world go round.
And guess what? You know what? You can't become a nurse unless you take English.
I teach. That's actually the only English. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the show before. The only English I teach right now is for nursing students.
Yeah,
so there's an online accelerated nursing program at UNCW, and I teach the nursing courses just for them.
So in your
not nursing, English. Not the nursing part. The English part. What am I talking about?
So in your own way, you are influencing future healthcare professionals.
Sorry, patients. Sorry. Well, on that note, I think we should get out of here because
this could go down a very long road.
I know. Angela, thanks so much for being on Dharma Drops again. You're my first person to be on 2 times.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Anytime.
As always, it was fun.
Thank you. You can always come back as often as you want.
All right.
So remember, guys, these are musings, not truths, unless Angela said it. You can trust what she says. I'm over here just talking. So anything I say, just take with a grain of salt. Oh, Angela, before we go, how can people get a hold of you?
You can find me on Instagram, Angela David Yoga, and on Facebook.
Cool. Is it Angela David or Angela David Yoga?
David.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So
Instagram, Angela David Yoga, and my teaching schedule at Longwave.
Awesome. That's exciting. Okay, so you can get a hold of Angela on Instagram and Facebook. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, you can find me on Instagram at, I have no idea what it is. It's at Rebecca Warfield Yoga and at Dharma Drops Podcast. And you can always find me online at www.dharmadropspodcast.com or RebeccaWarfield.com, but they both go to the same place. So until we meet again next time, bye. Hey Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Dharma Drops Podcast. Don't forget to head over to Facebook and join the Dharma Drops community page where we can hang out, share ideas, have fun, and just shoot the shit together. So head over to Facebook, search for Dharma Drops community page, and bada bing, bada boom, you're there. On Instagram, you can find me at Rebecca Warfield Yoga and at Dharma Drops Podcast. And of course, you can always head over to my website, RebeccaWarfield.com and DharmaDropsPodcast.com, and check out all my shenanigans there, including you can register for the Feeding the Wildlife 2-week course on my site. Okay, until we meet again next time, bye.